really filled out the first one. We have a quorum, it's 3 o'clock, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Behrens?
Present.
Mr. Christensen absent. Mr. Frericks?
Yes.
Ms. Lautner?
Present.
Mr. Noonan absent. Mr. Popa?
Present.
Mr. Trevis?
Present.
Mr. Walter?
Present.
Mr. Wessel?
Yes.
And Mr. Yeomans absent. 7-3.
Steve. If you're quick, you'll be 8 to roll call.
Steve.
Just say present and you're okay.
Our regular board still.
Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
The only thing we could suggest is possibly that BNR grant status, have that when someone comes in, or do you want to talk about it anyway?
I was thinking we'd shift to approval of the minutes, number 2 and number 3. Approval of financial reports, just start with that and get them done and out of the way.
Okay, so that means we'll
Because
do the
Klaus will
BNR
be-
grant when he
yeah,
comes
and
in.
then move DNR down to 3 in effect.
Saw an email from the sheriff. Are we to add hunting signs on the agenda, or are we in compliance there? The sheriff asked us to do
I
something.
wasn't aware he had.
There are hunting signs.
There are hunting signs.
I don't
I
think-
don't think he understands what we have posted, or that is in the rules.
Then I won't add it.
So we don't have to take any action, in your opinion? That's
No.
kind of what I thought.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think he simply was looking at the capital improvement plan and erroneously assumed that hunting isn't allowed. But the capital improvement plan is proposing additions. And it's already established that hunting is, you can participate in hunting in the parks now. I don't think he understood that.
I make a motion we approve the agenda and delay number 1 to whenever, what you call it? Klaus comes in.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there support?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we have an agenda. So approval of minutes. John Pope, I started to ask you minutes ago. Did you read the minutes?
I read them both, and I'm satisfied with them all.
Because I have to admit, I haven't read them. Either one of them.
I read last Friday's.
I make a motion we approve both minutes.
You should do one at a time, because somebody might have questions on the other side.
Make a motion we approve our regular meetings minutes dated January 22nd.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I make a motion we approve the special session that was held on February 14th.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of financial report.
We're a whopping 2.45% of our budget. Nothing standing out, so.
We're
I
like
have anything to add, so.
hibernation mode right now.
Yeah,
right?
kind of, yeah.
Someone asked or mentioned at our last regular meeting that if there was money left over, it goes back into the general fund. But then yet I look at our fund balances and just like the dam one, there's a fund carryover. So how can that be?
Would you like the clerk's office to come in and kind give you a little run through on the budget?
What is what?
Well,
Someone mentioned that if we have a fund balance, it goes back in the general fund.
It does.
But then why did it say there was a fund balance here, and on the dam authority one, there was a fund balance as we entered this year of
Do you,
70?
do you want the clerk's office to come in and explain?
I want what?
Would you like clerk's office staff to come in and just, it would take 5 minutes. That way everybody would be on the same page as to what the status of your budget is.
Current fund balance is the whole county's balance. It's not the parks. We don't have 5 million.
everybody's, but everybody's unspent budget will roll back into the general fund. Unless it has a special fund, it's my understanding. So, like, inspections, they'll have their own fund balance, and they keep those revenues. But with the general fund, I think everybody's rolls back.
One thing that can carry over is donations, and Laurel had suggested at our last meeting that we investigate what the sheriff has asked for, and that is a line item, I guess it's called, in the budget for donations. I found out we already have one. It was established earlier for some specific,
Probably the chapel.
may have been, but we have the ability to accept donations. Those will carry over. The accounting will carry them over and make sure it's spent on whatever it was for, even if we've drifted across the budget year.
That's no big deal. Let's move on.
Do I hear a motion to approve financials? So move.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Steve and I can pick up with, beginning before Klaus gets here, giving you the status of the DNR grant. For those who don't know, Kyle, I guess you're the one that hasn't been here. Upon getting the scoring and weighting scale for this year's Resources Trust Fund grant from the state early in January, going over it with Klaus and frankly with Patty O'Donnell, who Steve has put me in touch with, and will be helping helping me in the future with this grant application stuff. But we determined that we just don't have a chance with a Natural Resources Trust Fund grant. So we're shifting gears to a recreational passport grant. Those are more focused on development as opposed to the trust fund being both acquisition and/or development. You can only make a smaller request, but you have a more flexible match option position. Well, I don't know if it's any more flexible. It doesn't give you any more points, but it's a decision that we've looked at in terms of increasing our chances of having any success at all. Klaus is then here. Well, last Saturday at our special session, this group gave me authority to recommend, or to ask me to take a recommendation to last night's Board of Commissioners meeting that we be allowed to go from trust fund to recreational passport. That was done last night. Klaus is here now to give us a layout of choice of plans and the match that's related to those. Steve, I don't know if this is the time for you to speak up. I think it is, about our impression, feelings coming out of last night's commission meeting.
Well, we have two board members here. I guess my feeling was that we kept the match, in essence, the same. We set up to 95, and the original match was 95, and the original grant app was going for, what, 250, 350, or a large amount of money.
360.
360, and then this one, with the passport, we're going for half that or less.
240.
And then keeping the match the same, and I think Deb's comment was that can't be the match. But I think the feeling was that it was a pretty tall match for not as much money, and that was, I think that left the county board feeling that seemed kind of tall. And I guess.
Well, there was some misunderstanding there, but the basic thing is that they're feeling, certainly, it seems that on the board, there's strong feeling that we can only go for a smaller request from the state, limited to 150,000. So why should our match not be smaller as well? And that makes some intuitive sense. So Clausen's here to run through options we have to choose from and the related match. Steve and I said out loud to each other last night, whether it's a strong opinion, that we may be in a better political position if we go with one of these plans that will have a smaller dollar match. Melinda?
So you mean as far as success with the board or with the DNR?
Success with the board.
Okay, that's your first hurdle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
First big hurdle.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
we weren't feeling the love last night. I
No,
mean,
absolutely.
You couldn't have been feeling the love last night.
I
So
recognize that.
what we have got to do is have specific. When we come, we have to go back to the Board of Commissioners in March. And there'll be a public hearing, then the board has to approve.
The very
it then.
specific
So they
plan.
want exact amount we're gonna ask for, and they want exact match. What we have to ask for, but no up tos, and certainly not 95. I would, if I were a betting woman, I'd bet 95,000 is dead for its door. So, 75 makes a lot more sense, and that's 50% or somewhere even just short of that perhaps. Probably less.
Does the board as a whole understand, and this is just additional to what you said, not counter to it, understand that the first dollars that would possibly be spent by the county would not, should we be awarded this grant, would not be until 2021, and the project can be stretched over, therefore the money's over 3 years?
I think it's just basic dollars.
Okay. So that's where we're at. Klaus?
Yes.
Tell us a story.
What I did is, and we already had prepared a $65,000 scenario, we just didn't use it. We did, I don't know if Dave, if
For the trust fund.
for the trust, well, yeah, for the trust fund, because when we had heard that, there was some question on how the $10,000 incremental allocations of the original proposal several years ago was done, and would that work or not? I think that's still a consideration or concern. Where is money coming from for the match? We kind of did a scenario that does 65,000, which is a 30% match. But of course, when you take the match down, the project gets smaller.
And
Everyone knows the project has to get smaller, right?
I want to correct
So-
something so we're on the same page. You said, Klaus said 65,000, you said in the original trust fund. No, this is a recreational
passport?
passport.
Yeah, sorry, we did some scenarios already.
So this is passport. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, and so what I'm gonna give you
This
right
is
now,
work
rather
that's
than
just been
talking
done.
with my hands, I'll give you a piece of some paperwork. There's a couple things written on it. The piece in front is the $65,000 scenario, and there are some numbers in the column. I guess you could just pass those around, John, please. There's numbers in the column, I'll explain in a minute, because a couple of input items came in from Disability Network, for example, which they asked us to possibly include something, which is an increase. We talked with Patty O'Donnell, and she had some suggestions, and the Disability Network also had some consideration about getting the bridge approaches back into the proposal. So on the front here, I'll explain what those numbers I wrote in blue there on the right of the column mean. So the first page, everyone have one? The first page is us taking the trust fund grant and all the original numbers that were in that, and I don't have it to compare to it, but everything in yellow basically went down in value.
in some way or changed in some way to get the numbers to work. The ask at 65,000 is 150,000 maximum grant ask. The total project at 215 with a $65,000 local match, assuming coming from the county in some form. Not sure how those monies will be proven to be what source they're coming from yet at this point. But so this thing.
Before you go further,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
confused me a second. This was in the paperwork last night, and I kept looking for what is RP?
RP is Recreation Passport. That's the
Okay.
second optional grant
Okay.
that the DNR
I
offers.
spelled that out.
Yeah, and just fun things. Fundamentally, the difference is the amount you can ask for, is 300 in trust fund, it's 150 in Recreation Passport, RP.
And why
Okay?
do you have 215 there?
Because you add the match to it.
The total project cost would be the match plus the green.
Okay,
So
so
green is the
215
amount
is-
we're asking for, maximizing the grant ask at the bottom there. The
So
top
it's-
number is the total project in
Okay.
yellow.
So it's
Green plus blue equals
50
yellow.
plus 65,000, right?
What's
So
the,
that's-
what's the double statement of local match? You have 65,000,
And there's a little bit of a,
and then below that it says local match 95,000.
yeah, I'm sorry, it's just because I'm trying to do this fast.
Okay.
That is, just scratch that out, that's
Got
a
it.
cumulative thing. The numbers to pay attention to are 215, 65, and 150, okay? And then the numbers to the right are the percentage match. In this case now, the Recreation Passport, up until last year, they had a percentage match of 50-50. Now it's 25 minimum match. So we're able to match 25% of the total project costs would be your local match. Okay, in this case, so we're higher than that because of the 65. Usually, and in this case with Recreation Passport, the scoring criteria do not necessarily give you credit for a higher match either. In trust fund, they did. That's why we were pursuing up until January, and they changed everything and flipped it on the side, the amount of match to try and increase it to get it as high, the highest value of the match for trust fund. But now that we're focused on this project, the reason, let me take one more step back. The reason Recreation Passport works better is the DNR in the last round of changes to the criteria, what they call the weighted scale for scoring these grants, changed enough that when we went to rescore this in January as a trust fund grant from the last rounds, your score went down, all right? And it does not appear to us to be competitive for trust fund given the scores that are coming in now. So you have to be in 350 to 370 range, and this score, it was only scoring high 290s, maybe 300. So it was not going to get there. There was no way to make the trust fund grant get to fit the criteria as they currently have it weighted. So Recreation Passport is better. It's still going to be tight because we get the scoring here at about 185, 190. That's about the line. So depending on what comes into the coffers for the Recreation Passport, the DNR this coming spring, how competitive this will be based on other people's scores as well. So, but it's much more likely that your Recreation Passport grant is going to go through that way. So that's why we switched in the midstream, and we really only knew that about mid-January. So we had no way of really scoring the projects until we could get on the horn with the DNR and have them explain some pretty cryptic weighted scales.
If you recall, through the beginnings of our second application work last January, before the 5-year interruption, but even so, I've talked several times about my chasing collaboration, in that there was a 30-point category where we could gain points 30 points if we could really substantiate collaboration. The word doesn't even appear in this year's.
It was completely eliminated.
Completely eliminated.
Yep. Which took out 30 points of possible increase that we were shooting for until we started updating the rec plan. So in my experience, they don't change things that much. The other things, year to year, but they did a lot in those last round. The other thing that changed was there's been a lot of angst about urban projects and the big cities getting a lot of point value for being an urbanized area. And so the DNR was changing the weighted scoring because there was a lot of complaining from rural townships that basically couldn't compete for projects. So they changed some things around there, which sort of helped in some cases. If you're 15 miles away from an urbanized area like Traverse City, like Brownick Valley is, you could get some more point value, but it's still not pulling you up enough because other things went away. So once we did the scoring, this is, if you want to see the forensics, this is our pre-score of the 2020. You can just pass it around. We go through and we go through all the criteria and we just look at, make notes, try to figure out what changed, what didn't, what's going to help or not help. By the time I did that, you can see that at the end there's a score that just doesn't come up to the level that we need. And then we ran it for Recreation Passport, and this is kind of my worksheet, Dallas's worksheet for that. And the Recreation Passport has a better chance.
So what is, you have, something accessible?
Universal accessible, so.
Okay.
Yep.
And then further down you have ADA, which is the American Disability.
Yep.
Is there a difference in the two?
Yeah, I mean, we could, the reason I put it that way, the paved parking, ADA, meets current standards, but we add one more to the spaces required, or several more to the spaces required by ADA, and that makes it UA. It's
Okay.
just one of those things. So I could change that ADA UA. Yeah, so you understand.
Somewhere
Yeah.
it should say what UA means.
Okay.
Universally accessible.
Goes beyond
What,
just
yeah, what
letter of
happened,
law.
it was ADA for a long time, and now with people going for grants, they've taken ADA, which is, wheelchair accessible, and they've gone to a category called UA, which is basically 2 wheelchairs side by side, plus a little bit. So not only can the wheelchair get down there, but one can be going and one can be coming with a little extra. So it makes it a wider path, and part of the rationale for that is that it is more accessible. Also, for people like us that are trying for a grant, if we go to UA, we get more points.
That's fine, it just should, somewhere it should say what UA means.
It does
You don't have
in
to
the
just-
narratives,
that means
just hard to fit
urban
into
or
the chart, but
unlikely
yeah,
or-
we can get it in there.
Yeah, that would be nice to have some definitions, I suppose
Well,
would be good, yeah.
either use them or, and then you've got a.
This is our
A,
kind of
B.
internal worksheet, that's why it's not.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
but
but I can,
Shoot us an email with the.
I can do that,
with
sure.
the definitions,
Sure.
maybe.
So what is UAV at the bottom of the topography survey? What is that?
UAV is different. UAV is unmanned aerial vehicle topographic survey. That's necessary to conduct on the property. If you were to go to construction, you need to do a survey, a topo survey to get a construction plan ready for it. Sorry. Different acronym. It's, in other words, drone. Some people like to use the word drone.
Got it.
Unmanned aerial vehicle.
So the accuracy of the drone survey takes the place of some physical surveying.
When you have an open site, you get really good high-resolution aerial photography, and then it goes down to the near tenth of an inch in terms of vertical shot on the ground plane if you're not tree covered. So you can get I was explaining this today, a really good topographic map with a lot more area. So I put that in there because we'll probably go beyond the scope of this project by able to fly over more property, so you'll have that data.
We'll have a really good.
You'll have a good base map
Base
for
map, okay.
the future. So that's the idea
Before
there.
you go on, before I pass this, so we scored, and I've got in front of me the recreational passport.
Yeah, that's a
That's
rough.
Roughly, we're at 185 out of 250, and it's 185.
185 to 2 and 190 are scores that got funded last year. Not 190 is kind of the
Really
line,
nowhere for
right
us
on the
to up any of
line.
these scores?
Pardon me?
There's really nowhere for us to up any of these scores.
Well, it's tough, Melinda, because there just aren't a lot of places to add to it. You can increase your match, it won't matter. You know, several places just don't provide an opportunity to do anything more. And some of them you just got what you got. Like, for example, your median income level is what it is in Leelanau County, we can't change it. So, but you can look at that, and if you want, we can make a copy of that so you can see if there's anything we might be able to do. But we try to find them if we can and suggest where. Yes, sir.
I had a question. Is there a portion of the plan that we could possibly add by, let's say we throw $10,000 from Parks and Rec budget at the plan, is there something that we could do in the plan with that extra money that would give us more points?
If there were, I would suggest it, but I mean, they don't really go into specifics like if you do so many more of these, you're going to get this many more points. It's more about the character of the site. I mean, you can see the criteria there.
Okay.
And some of the other components like, are you achieving universal access? At what level are you achieving universal access? What is your local match? What is your median income level? They're all kind of mapped out. It's a lot more straightforward in Recreation Passport, but it also makes it harder because you either got it or you don't. So that's where, for example, the collaboration piece, we had an opportunity up until about late January that we were able to maybe get that point value up, and Dave's been working on that, which is not wasted work because we're getting more money from some communities and there's our participation for the maintenance of the pond, which is big. We do have to show a maintenance plan, and Scott, we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. If Dave hasn't yet, we want to talk to you about that. We wrote a maintenance plan for both the Rec Trust Fund, and it has to go into this application. It's important that we get all the points in those areas, so we're working on making sure we get them. And I think we've got a pretty good piece of work for the maintenance program, operation and maintenance program.
Now,
But
if I may jump in here, one of the categories of points available, and it may be spread between two different categories, but substantiating that we are a unique offering, especially for the disabled, in the region. And so it seems this is partly what, well, I think.
for large group fishing, if I can amend your statement, right?
Well, the unique part. The unique part of it is our fishing resource. Yes. And so the paring back that Klaus has gone through, that I've gone through with him, and trying to match it with the weighting scale and the scoring scale, is to really focus our application on our improving the UA access to this nearly unique regional fishing resource.
Right.
In order to, to frame it that way as best we can, in order to get it.
And I think Patty concurred on that when she took a
absolutely.
independently looked at
Absolutely.
it. So
And
that's really what we've been trying to do, is focus on this core area of the park. But now that we're scaling back, we have to be careful not to take too much of the ADA access components out.
Correct.
Yeah. Or UA, Melinda, access. So if you like, the main loops are still in play here. The loop 6 foot wide, as Steve adequately described, to provide UA passing for wheelchair or people walking. That's the two big green numbers there at the top of that. We scaled back a little bit on number 1, which is trying to amend the parking lot. And then we took out some things. We took out number 4, which were, you don't have the graphic in front of you, but the little bridge approaches are too steep to the existing bridge. So we were retrofitting those to make them flatter for the approaches, to make them accessible, so the bridge would become accessible. That we took out in this scenario, but you see my number 9K right there next to it? That was the number I took out. So this scenario doesn't show the 9K. So I said, well, where am I going to find that? So I went back up to the top and said, let's not do any parking lot improvements. We'll still do the ADA or UA parking spaces, which are necessary to connect to our walkways. But the re-graveling and creating an island and some of the other things on the parking lot, we have to forego because we don't have the money. Won't have the budget to do it. So we're scaling, our focus is to this corner of the parking lot where the ADA parking, UA parking is available, that links us to the trails, that links us to the facilities that are accessible. So that's why I marked that up this morning after I spoke with Dave about last night's meeting. Then we took out the interpretive kiosk. There's already some signage there. You have some signage. It could be maybe spruced up and added. We had a new one going in there. UA potty enclosure we still need to keep. The 5K next to that encircled is input we recently got from the Disability Network about adding a roof or shade, Dave put it, over one of the potties for, I think, obvious reasons. They get really hot in there, so the advocacy groups for universal access for barrier-free, we're talking about, can we shade it so that little building doesn't heat up as much. So in other words, putting a roof over it, that means putting up posts and putting some kind of a cantilever or some kind of a roof structure beyond what the potty itself has. Because if you've all been in them, when they sit out in the field like that, they get super hot. So that was what the concerns was, trying to alleviate some of that when we provide the structure around it. So 5K has to go into the project somewhere above the 10. Shade structure is the outdoor classroom stayed in. There used to be, number 8, there were 3 small pads to fish from. We reduced them to 1. Those were the areas around the pond. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 areas around the pond, aside from the large redeck that we did on the old green there, which is down below a little further. So that's number 9. We reduced it in size from about a $40,000 price tag to $30,000. In other words, made it smaller so that we could afford to get some money out of it. The wildlife observation areas, there were 3 or I think 4, and we went down to 1 for this. And then the one that we would propose to keep would be on the opposite end of the upper pond. And then there were several more. There were 3 more locations that we showed in this part of the plan. And those are about to the tune of, I mean, that's a healthy budget, $2,500, because we're not doing that much to those locations. We're going to provide a little bit of a knockout or bump out from the pathway and some screening so someone can hang out there and see birds or see wildlife but not be on the pathway. So we might be able to do more than 1, but I'm limiting it to 1 right now. Benches, UA benches, picnic table, taking, I got a spelling error there. And so we reduced those from several to 1 along some areas, again for cost. And then the paved UA ADA parking spaces, we left the same. We took out the native landscaping and pond plantings with the hope, I think, that there's still going to be some other plantings going on with the Conservation District, possibly, maybe with the tribe efforts and some of those. In fact, isn't there a tribal grant now?
The tribal grants for
It's for this year.
removal
For
of invasive species.
right.
But this group hasn't, I was at a meeting this week where, yes, we've got some more plantings coming along through a program and with the Conservation District. I'm not prepared to talk about that yet because
Right.
we just had our very first exploratory meeting.
No, you
And
can't put anything new like that in right now.
um,
So
and
that's the scenario we kind of, I think that's about as low as we can go without
Well,
almost eliminating too much.
Let me
So-
bring this up right away. Item number 2,
Uh-huh,
the Prairie Loop.
yes.
If you show us where that goes, because that's an expensive item, and I'm wondering if that's not really focused on our fishing resource.
Yeah, well, I think we kept the name, Dave, but I don't know that the quantity is representing the half of the trail this way and the half that we tucked in around the pond tighter
Okay.
here. We did originally have one that went like this,
So
but
that's-
we felt like we needed to get all the way around the pond
Yes.
in terms of access. So, I believe those numbers are still correct in here from a,
Then what's the pond view loop?
well, that's what I'm trying to, I don't have the CAD file, but I'm pretty sure that the way we split the pathways up, I did, originally I had one part of the loop and then this loop, and then we tucked it in here, and it did reduce this by some, but we didn't eliminate it. So I want to check, we'll check those numbers, but I'm fairly certain those are what
Okay.
we had planned for the loop around the path.
Okay.
And we can rename it just one path if you want to, but we'll double check the numbers. We should, if I could see, I have a chart that shows the segment by segment quantities for each of those pathways. And we'll double check that. But if that is possible eliminating, I'll let you know, but I don't believe it's.
Yeah, I remember
It's
now
possible.
exactly that you did go through those steps, so I
Yeah.
think probably these are,
And I might have even,
Accurate for that.
connected a few things in this core area to the outdoor classroom, to the parking, et cetera. There's a fair amount of pathway in the job, in the project.
but these two figures, number 2 and number 3, adding up would include those
Yeah, they-
ancillary park
They
pathways.
should, and I will double check them though, just so I can answer your question more accurately. It's just not available without a computer here. I have to actually get on the drawings and check some things. But if it's possible, there's some, savings there. We'll certainly take a look, we'll let you know right away.
Now, remember that all of this is still open to some changes.
Right.
This is a plan that, where the numbers have to add up, the commitment has to come from the county in order to get it into the application and even have it accepted. But once the application's accepted and we even are awarded the grant, there is still, well, the size of the large fishing platform.
Well, this is a master plan. When you do a construction plan, there's gonna be some refinement of
Right.
this, and it might be, oh, we don't need that segment, we'll do it here, or we'll connect it here. So you have that flexibility by the way that you're putting in the project, but the intent is what they call the grant scope items. That's what these end up being in the grant agreement, similar to that list, will be something that if you do a wholesale change, you eliminate one, then you have to talk to them. But if you go from 2,000 linear feet to 1,500 linear feet, they're not gonna care. And you do more parking improvements instead of 500 feet of pathway, you decide to end up moving. But at this level of planning, this level of base map, it gets us good enough numbers to get the budgets established for these items.
So the important part of what we're considering here is first hurdle, Board of Commissioners, and then whether it matches what we want to focus on at Veronica. On the other hand, I think we're pretty clear that best points availability to us with the Recreation Passport Grant is to focus on this fishing resource, the unique, both family and disabled access to this.
And safety improvements
And
was
safety
the other
improvements,
factor, yeah.
access and safety.
Klaus, is this the first year that they're up to 150, or has that been for a while? 'Cause wasn't it at 50?
Yeah, I think last year was the first year, then this round is, again, they funded 150.
Okay, so we're not gonna have a flood of everybody realizing it's
Well,
150?
it's not the very first time, so yeah, it's out the, your cat's out of the bag in that regard. People know that there's more money in that, but it's still, not as much as some people are trying to seek, depending on the project. So, and it just ends up your scores better in that grant option versus trust fund.
So I want to just make sure that I heard correctly, that the most still fund is 150,000.
That's right.
And there's absolutely no advantage in terms of getting the grant for how much the county matches.
That's right.
So the only advantage of the county paying more is the total project cost is more.
Is-
You
could
accomplish
go-
more.
We could accomplish more, that's correct.
But
You
we
know-
won't get any more money from the DNR.
No,
No.
After you spend $50,000, you gotta spend 50.
yeah.
I think if one of these things that we've pared down, is in the range of, say, $10,000, and it would put the shine on the apple, I would recommend that we take 10,000 from our budget and add it. And that going to the board, and when Tony says, what is this number, we can say, that number's 10,000. We're taking it from our budget
Mhm.
and putting it toward this, if that is possible.
Well, is this where we should have the clerk talk to us about that?
Would you like me to get it?
Because I've seen this as a possibility, but we'd have to have that money spent the very year, this calendar year.
I'm not referring to the 10,000 that we put,
I know that.
that go back, I'm talking about just using our budget money.
Correct. Exactly. In 2021 or 2022 or 2023, but we have to spend it the year we budgeted that way. So that's timing in terms of paying the bills.
I know what you're saying, so that
When I raise this
we won't be
question-
spending the 10,000 until the bill comes in.
Correct. That's correct. And the bills come to the county first, and then the county's reimbursed by the state. So there will be expenditures beginning late 2021, not before. So
we
I
would
think
be-
we have room in year one, year two, if we succeed in getting this, of using some of our budget for that given year.
We would be saying
For
that
the
we're
match.
gonna spend it out of that, of future year's budget.
Well, this
not
is-
this
I read-
year's budget.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Is what
Can't
we
the
would be
fut-
saying.
Can't be the future year's budget, it has to be this year. It has to be expended the year we.
Well, and you have to show that you're, by October of this year, you have to show where that match comes from. So if the board has an issue of showing it come all in from general fund, and it's gotta come out of your fund, which is only fiscally 1 year, it needs to be spent by the following July or June, right?
So,
Well,
So,
we're on a year basis.
but when your
for our
fiscal year
budget.
starts,
It's
January
January.
so
Calendar.
it's January 1, so
well,
how
let
do
me
you allocate this year for a budget you only started in January for next year? I don't know.
Well,
You don't.
what
I
about
guess we
just
can't do it.
presenting it to the
It'd be the
board is-
future.
is that way though?
I don't, there's no structure for that, I don't think.
Because
We
we
probably can't do it.
we don't always spend the money, but we allocate, we always give back a lot of money. But realistically, some of this stuff, maybe could we just say, county commit to it, but like this, the porta potty enclosure, $10,000, like that's something we might just do at this board level and decide, you know, if the disability network came to us and said, look, we think this is really important, that's an expenditure we might do. Could we just talk to the commission and say, like, can we parse these pieces out as things from our budget, because they're the type of things, we're getting to get this grant for it, we're getting to do it, but it's the type of thing that the commission would do and should be spending our money on. Or could just pull out some pieces and say, okay, because I get it, the saying we're gonna take 10 grand from our budget doesn't really work, because we give it back, we don't have the money allocated, and we're always in that trap. I mean, since I've been on this commission, we've probably given back $65,000 to the county, like every. But could we just start, could we designate out our pieces and say, next year, this is what we're gonna, you know,
Well-
because I get it's kind of like what you're saying, we can't really take the money, because we gotta give it back.
except that, if I got you to correct, Klaus, you said we have to identify where all of the match comes from by
Well,
next October?
yeah, the county has to make a pledge that they're gonna allocate funding for the match in some way, shape, or form. The state doesn't care whether it comes from the Parks Committee money or a general
Got it.
fund or wherever, but in some way that commitment has to be made. So I thought what occurred was the $10,000 from your budgets was pledged, but I don't know how that functionally works. You
It
can't
doesn't.
do that, right? So that means the $30,000 is really not
But,
technically available to the county board.
but year 21 comes and we get our first bill for work done.
Right.
We've been awarded, we've gone through all the construction planning, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. So the plan goes. we get work done late in 2021. If we budgeted it, can we not pay that bill out of our budget? and
Yeah,
have it-
because you're doing a fiscal budget for the, you're always ahead of what you're spending, it should be, when you're doing your budgeting, the county is ahead. They're pledging general funding that's gonna be put into the budget this January for the next year. So it's the same for you.
But the state doesn't
Presumably.
care
No,
that we aren't telling them that in October.
County Parks and Rec is part of the county.
Okay.
If you were getting a funding source from, the Rotary charities, you'd have to show that $40,000 of it is coming from the Rotary charities and it's secured by the October deadline. If you show that as part of your match, that's what I'm trying to say.
Got it.
So we could do that, but it's more of a deal with the board.
Yeah,
Council
and I
board,
don't know the
because
nuances.
The board's
of
still
it.
gonna commit to pay.
I mean, both budgets sounds like are established in January for the coming year, so the
We
pledge
start,
that.
we start in June, and it gets finalized in the fall for Jan
Yeah.
1.
So since you're going in for an April grant, the county board is deciding to put money in the future budgeting round starting in June and ending in January. Similarly, you would be doing the same thing as Parks Committee, but what you can't do is 2021's budget, right? That's where they're having problems with it. So, I think, so that's where
We'll be
Well,
doing
this June is 2021.
I'm sorry, 2022, I missed that. Yeah, you can't do another year and pledge that like you were,
Yeah.
that was previously kind of negotiated, because I see why that would.
But I want to follow what Kyle was saying. So Kyle, were you talking about if we were awarded, we would begin to pick away at these? If we're awarded the grant?
I guess that would be my thought, just looking at like what would we say out of our budget is something that would be something we might do. Like one of the things is like $10,000, we just tell the board, hey, normally we're supposed to be making improvements to the park.
Okay, but
This is kind of a general
Yeah, I want to
improvement.
follow. So you're saying like in 2020, if we heard we're awarded the grant,
Mhm.
is that something we would be allowed to do?
Start construction and have that count as part of the project?
Because the county's just gonna say, okay, it's coming out of your budget, but they wouldn't reimburse us out of our budget. Or are they gonna say, well, if you got money to do it,
Right.
but once it's
It
awarded,
seems
everyone
to me
okay.
that it'd be simpler if you just said, if you know you're gonna spend so much money of your 2021 budget on some of this stuff, wouldn't it be better to leverage your money by putting it into the grant allocation that you tell the county you would do from your budget?
And I think that's the question though, is that let's say we apply for the grant, we get it this year.
Yeah.
Even though we haven't started the project or got the funding, can we start spending money from this year's budget and have it count towards our match?
No.
No.
So we have to wait till.
There's my second question,
Yeah.
agreement for the match,
Yeah,
yeah,
you-
so
you
we'd
have-
be better just doing cash match.
Yes.
Okay.
You can only incur costs on the grant once you're under agreement with the state, which will not happen until, you won't know until December, you won't be able to have an agreement until the spring of '21, so you can't spend money until you, except for engineering, designing and putting a bid package out, you can start in January. Like, so that they realize that you're behind the 8 ball, if they only tell you in May or June, okay, you can start designing this, now you're never gonna bid anything. So they allow once you're technically approved by the board to go into design and bidding right January 1, so.
I think an important thing for us to do, when we do go for the board in March, what you need to have is factually, down to the dollar, well, I guess we did it in $10,000 increments, but how many years did we not spend $10,000 out of our budget?
I think
Well,
two
2
is
years
due,
so
3.
far, and
So
our stated
So
commitment.
what we need to get is that statement from Jen that said, yes, can we get the county board of commissioners to recognize that our general fund is $30,000 plumper already because we've been chasing this grant. So if we could get them to recognize that already we've got the 30,000, then we're halfway there. You know what I'm saying? So we've got to get them to recognize.
And I didn't hear anything last night that suggested to me that we'd be successful.
Getting them to recognize that. No, I didn't either, other than we just didn't have we were like, I don't know, how many was it? We just didn't, we didn't say, we've given you back $30,000. They may or may not, because a lot of departments don't spend their budgets and it just gets rolled
We
and you
gave
start all
back
over.
45,000, we didn't spend anything last year on capital improvements.
Right, that was my question, why can't we commit, we've got $45,000 in our capital improvement fund. Why can't we just say, if we get the grant, that's 45,000 right there, we're gonna spend it on,
Well, because we wouldn't know when we got the grant until when, September? So it would be 2 years not doing any improvements to our parks anywhere, right? We've either gotta, if we knew we were gonna get the grant, I would be thinking that, or at least a portion of it, maybe 20.
You actually technically won't know until December.
Decent.
Yeah, for certain.
Mr. Pope?
Are they gonna keep track what we spend it on then, for the next couple of years? If we say we're gonna make this shelter over whatever, and find out we didn't do it, and we spent more on the gravel road around the ponds,
So that's what I was implying with the scope items. If you have a shelter and so many feet of pathway, and so if you took out the shelter wholesale and did something else, you have to apply to the board has to approve that through their staff. If I said, oh, all of a sudden we decided.
This board?
No,
No, the states.
the governing board of the grants.
so if we
Trust fund.
vary from anything,
Yeah, what's in this project lays the framework for the scope of your grant agreement, and you can, within reason, adjust those things, but you can't eliminate something. Like if you have pathway and you wanted to build a playground instead, you'd have to request what's called a scope change in the grant, and they would have to see if it affects your score, because the scoring is based on what you proposed.
well, that potty enclosure,
Yes.
the bid came in for 7,500,
Uh-huh.
we got 3,500 left over.
Oh, you could put, no, that's fine. I mean, that's different. You're not changing, you're not eliminating a scope item, you just got it for
What
less
if
money.
it costs
So you can apply that
13,000?
money to build more path, or add
13,000.
another bench, or do whatever.
I have to scoot, but Jen's here, she can talk budget to this group and kind of go back and reiterate the possibility of taking some of our money and have it be part of the match, and how that would work, because it's in the future, it's not, but anyway, I apologize.
No worries.
Gotta go.
I guess with the exception of what Scott mentioned, is your capital improvements budget carries over from year to year? That's a fund? No, that's also eliminated. Oh, interesting.
If we budget for 2021, 45,000, just to grab that figure, in capital improvement, and then late in 2021, we start getting the bills, and I'm assuming that we're awarded this, we've gone through all the steps, so that by late 2021, we can begin on doing the project, the actual construction. As the bills come in for that, can we use from capital improvements line in the budget?
I guess I'm kind of coming in late to your discussion since I haven't been to your prior meetings. So when applying for this grant, you have to have a 50% match, correct?
No, we have to have,
Minimum
Minimum
$50,000.
25%.
A minimum of 25.
and the plan we're looking at right now is 30% match,
25%.
65,000 and 30%
So the
match.
most we can ask for on this one's 150,000. We've got to have a 25% match. So if we ask for the whole 150, we need 50,000.
Right.
But we're gonna go for it. Put it on to get the.
And is this a state or a federal grant?
State grant.
Okay, so what you're looking at is you have your grant application process, you're applying for the grant. If you get awarded, the board has to match that, which would be budgeted. So what happens in a grant situation is there is no carryover, there is no use from one line item to another. You actually create an expense line item for this grant. So if you choose to come to the board and say, I'm going to eliminate this line item and this line item so that we have a match in this group, it's one expense item that this grant gets. because it also is going to have a corresponding revenue. So when you go to do these enhancements, it's not an enhancement from capital outlay and an enhancement from contractual services or whatever. It's one expense line item for your full amount budget. Is that?
Right, that's understood. I think what they're grappling with is the monies that are allocated from their fiscal budgeting, from a recreation committee standpoint. I guess there's two sets of money. There's money that's,
So that's okay, there's not two sets of money.
Okay.
This is a general fund department.
Uh-huh.
So a general fund department is allocated from the Board of Commissioners through budget process.
right?
So if this grant is awarded, then it is up to the Board of Commissioners to dictate how much of their budget they lose to spend on other projects
So
for
what,
the year.
I guess then the question
Or
is.
gain. The board may decide to give them this entire project plus keep their budget intact, meaning it's an increase to their budget. Again, that's a board decision. Does that help?
It does.
Everybody got quiet. I just-
That's why the dam thing, that was set up as a fund.
The
taxes
dam
went
is
into
the
it,
dam is
and there
fund
was a
because
carryover.
It's a taxable, that's a special assessment.
Yeah, and there was a
That is special
carryover from
assessment.
year to year.
Currently, with this budget, you are using general fund tax dollars.
Yeah.
Every improvement, everything that you spend
That's
is
why
a
the
general
dam
tax
has a
dollar.
carryover.
There is no fund. Right, it's general, it's a department. You're a
Well, you said we
department.
could set up one.
Set up a fund? No, this is an expense item within your Parks
No,
and
when we get the
Rec.
grant, we'd set up this fund.
It's an
Line item.
expense. You have
Line item.
right, so
Not a fund.
you have your revenue of 150,000 or whatever it is from the grant that comes into the general fund revenue. And then you have a
Match.
corresponding general fund expense that will be in the Parks and Rec department for what you are allocated to spend.
But that would carry until it's spent.
In essence, carried to it's spent, meaning if you have monies, so if you have 215 allocated, you're talking about for 2021, right? For 20,
Even 22.
okay, so
It can be-
21.
It can be stretched
So
over
if-
3 years.
So if you have 215,000 and the board has agreed for this to be spent over 3 years, then the first year we give you the 215, and let's say you spend 75. So the next year, you're gonna have 215 minus 75 in your 2022 budget. If you spend more than the next year, it's gonna roll. So whatever your year-end balance becomes your new beginning balance in that department.
Jen, is there any way, and we talked about this last night, any way that this commission could say, we'd like to reduce our budget by X amount this year and give it to you to put in reserve for the following year?
No, I mean, you could say a budget that you were looking for your 2021, that you're going to reallocate some of your budgeted line item, your budget as a total,
Towards the grant match.
towards the grant match, but you wouldn't say necessarily you would save money. You're not saving, you're just underspending, It's,
But we-
yeah.
But we could say, if I just heard you correctly, that in our budget, our proposed budget for 2021, that we want to commit from our regular allocation,
Yes.
yearly allocation from
Yes.
the board, that we want to budget that towards
Your grant.
the grant.
Yep. Yep. Yep, you can easily in your budget prep,
And-
Steve generally helps.
And so the
with-
secret would be to keep the amount we budgeted there low enough that it got spent that year.
In essence, I mean, basically, once the board approves your 2021 budget, that's your golden ticket number that's going to carry for the next how many years. Once the board has accepted the fact that you're gonna apply for this grant and you have all in, that money's yours. The board already decides, once you've applied and once they give you permission to apply, they've sealed the deal that your money's there.
So in other words, it
They may
carries over
ask
the
you where
year.
you want to, what you're going to do, but you don't have to forget, you don't have to unspend anything.
It carries over the year then, the
It
fiscal
does
year.
not, the grant carries over,
Yeah, the money's available.
So,
once approved.
so when we come to the board in March, are we going to ask for, do we have to have the $65,000 upfront, or can the board
There's no money
commissioners
up-
commit
no money up front.
$22,000 a year for 3 years?
What happens is it sounds as though if this is a 215,000 total project, what happens is 150 comes in as a revenue. You itemize for 215,000, it is not shown anywhere that someone forgave or unspent or asked for 65.
But we're gonna ask for 65 from you.
You're asking 65 from you're asking for 65,000 from your budget. So I think
Well,
what
there's
you're.
two ways to do it. We've asked in the past, we asked it basically for the board to commit, and we said we would do our part by turning back in the 10,000. I'm gonna get to there too. And we said, okay, we'll just set aside, or unspent, 10,000 a year, and that'll help with this, when we were looking at the 95,000. So, we could come to the board and say, if you'll donate to us, not even counting our parks budget, and we got a parks budget that's got to do business, right? So we said, on top of that, will you board of commissioners give us 22,000 a year for 3 years? Commit to that. Then we don't have to worry about our budget. Or what you're saying is, us come and say, okay, for the next 3 years, we will take $22,000 of our capital outlay and put it towards the project.
Yeah, you have to, what I'm saying, you should have to get a feel for the board. Are they up on the fact that they have a $65,000 investment that's gonna give them $150,000 return? That's how I would look at that. Or, do I still need my budget in my parks because this isn't gonna do everything that we need to do, so I need to keep my budget, and I'm asking the board for your $65,000 that you're gonna allocate towards this grant out of fund balance, that you then get a $150,000 return. You have to spend to get. Is that correct?
Could they do both? Could you ask the board, so this is the splitting of hairs, the 65,000 out of the general fund, you're ready, that's where the 95 came from, is 3 years of $10,000 allocation. So if like Kyle's implying, if you spent money, and Dave's implying from the next round of your budget, $20,000, $30,000, it goes into that line item, coupled with the general fund.
Who reports
Money.
the state expenditures? Who reports that this money's spent?
It all goes through the pay application process. As the pay applications come in, they're processed, and they go through us, they go to the grant coordinator at the state that verifies, and then basically
So
you do a
if-
reimbursement process for the funds.
So we front
to the
it.
state.
We
Yes,
front the whole
it's a
250.
reimbursement process. Yes.
And do they like percentage it, like, okay, so here's 10,000, we'll reimburse,
No.
7, and you gotta pay the 3, or is it?
No, we pay the whole 215, and the state approves your bills and
So-
sends us the money.
So
Well, at a certain point, we've gotta pay our 50 or 65, so I guess my question is, do they just wait and leave it till the end? Do
no,
they front load
it's
it, or do they
usually
give
for minimum of 4 reimbursement requests. So after you spent upwards about a quarter of the dollars in that project, so quarter 215, you're spending $55,000-$60,000.
So
right?
they'll give us a
So-
$45,000 check at that?
So then you ask for reimbursement through work completed and approved, the pay applications, the process that goes to the grant coordinator at the state. They hold 10% until the end of the project, and they reimburse 90% of your reimbursement request.
Then Jen is right.
So you're sending
Town's
in-
got to front everything.
Well, you gotta cash flow everything, right? But, well, you cash flow the project.
So are they gonna front load our 50, or is it proportionate, or do they back load our 50? I know we have to pay everything up front, but when does our 50 get booked as paid? Our portion.
When you say our, do you mean the county or the Parks and Rec?
So there's,
The match.
yeah, like when they
When
cut
does
us
it
the
get
first.
booked?
Yeah, when they cut us the first check, we've spent $55,000. We send in our reimbursement, here's all our receipts.
Uh-huh.
We spent $55,000. How much does the state pay us?
90% of that reimbursement request.
Well, but no, but we're supposed to pay a certain percentage.
90% based on your match, correct. So you're paying the bill, right?
Yes.
The state's paying in this case, 70% of that bill, less 10% of the total.
So when they cut us a check, they're taking out our
Correct.
30%.
Yeah.
We've spent
Correct.
55,000.
Yeah, sorry,
They're
that's
gonna
right.
give us whatever, 40% or 60% of that. When they cut the check, they're gonna hold
Yep.
10%. So as we pay the bills, we're paying
Less.
all of it, but as we pay the bills, we're accruing our share.
Correct.
So theoretically, since we can spend this over 3 years, we could actually book our portion over, we don't have to pay all the 50,000 up front. As long as we have the commitment from the board, we could theoretically book out,
Over a 3-year period.
over a 2 or 3 year period, our match. We don't have to they're not gonna make us cut the check. I mean, we are gonna cut the check, but like, as bookkeeping goes, we don't have to cut the check for the first 65,000 before they'll start reimbursing us, right?
No.
So
You
we
have
could
to, you
budget-
have to spend roughly about a quarter of the project cost to ask for your first reimbursement.
Okay.
That's why it came to
But we could-
50,000, 50 to 60,000.
I guess in my mind, then, we could book over 2 years our match. Actually, we're doing it all, but we could actually book our match over 2 years pretty easily if the project took.
And the scale of this project's probably gonna start in 21 and finish at the end of 22, by the end of 22.
So
You're not gonna have this contractor work for 3 years to build this amount of stuff, more than likely.
Would it be over 2 years, or I guess you don't think so?
Yeah, it'll be two fiscal cycles, because you're starting in 21 and you're finishing in 22, balancing out.
So we could break it up theoretically and tell the board, out of 2 of our, you can propose, shrink our budget 2 years by some level. Because that's what you're kind of saying. This is either the county's either going to view it as they're increasing our budget, because at the end of the day, it's all money to us. It's just how it's allocated. But we could go to them and say, look, we need 65, but over these 2 years, while you're paying this,
Okay.
shrink our budget 15. So really what we need is, what is that, 35.
I'm wondering now if we're
County
getting
pocket.
a little ahead of ourselves in that we certainly have to decide if this is the plan that we, the Parks and Rec Commission, the scale of the plan we think we should recommend.
Because what we really, it is, that's a true question, but I only heard it. Because what we really need from the county, however we budget it, however we're working, it's just the commitment they're gonna, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who agree and they're gonna cut the check. And how we budget it, and it sounds like we can maybe finagle budgeting it over 2 years and taking some out, but we gotta get them to say yes.
But the immediate need, we need the Board of Commissioners to say, the immediate thing they need to agree to is that they will back
Yes.
65,000.
Because I imagine that's what the commission wants to see, is some sort of vote saying.
And it's gonna have to upfront the rest as the money comes in.
Now, Parks and Rec, they want to ask accounting, how much money we turn back into. We set aside, we think $10,000 for 3 years. And then they said last year, we did not spend our capital outlay. We did or didn't, we don't know. So can we find out how much we intended to set aside and turn back in the past 3 years?
I can give you that number.
Okay. Only just because we can, that just might be a selling point for us.
But am I not correct that right?
Did.
I don't know if it's an opposite sign, that's why I didn't say on the record. Opposite result, meaning we gave it to you.
You didn't figure
decided-
out shit, did you?
So we didn't, right, because it was our shit before I did that.
But do we need to know some of that detail right now? Right now is what this group has to do.
We,
This is a big
Is
thing.
to vote that we approve of this plan and recommend it. And therefore, what is you and Ty's opinion of a $65,000 match now? Because all,
I'm not saying it, I'm just saying, you have to sell it. Because whoever's gonna be sitting here, has got to sell it, so you gotta understand where the 65 is coming from and when, et cetera. So, that's before we can sell it.
It's just consuming.
So as long as we all understand now that, then we're good.
so when Tony asked, where's the 65 coming from? The answer would be that. what's your
General
answer?
fund, it's coming from, she just said, it's coming from your general fund. There's no other fund available
We
to you.
don't have 65,000 in our general fund, we can just throw at this park.
Yeah,
What's your answer?
yeah.
What's your answer?
There is none.
I guess
There's no other place money
The
can come from.
counter
for this
is,
project.
that I would say, I've been on this commission for, I don't know, 6, 7 years now. We need to stop this problem. If we go back and we look at our budget, every year we give money back. Every year we don't complete a capital improvement project that we should have completed because we did not have enough money to do it. And we keep getting small ball into not improving our parks and not reinvesting. And if we want to fix that problem, we have a chance here to get $150,000 from the state and actually improve one of our parks that we have consistently failed to improve because we always have just a little bit of money and not enough money to actually complete any real projects. And it's been going on for darn near a decade now, and we got to move forward. And we got to actually improve some of these parks. That's the argument.
Well, and the other flip side of that is that in the past, we've looked at, as we got towards the end of our year, we've looked at it and said, okay, what do we need? We needed picnic tables. So we would decide, okay, this year we're putting it into picnic tables. And in the next year, we needed benches, or the next year we needed a new dock. So we would put it into the park. But the fact is, as you said, we've been setting aside capital improvement projects that we should have been doing in our parks for 3 years. So you're right, and we keep getting small ball, but they just keep snowballing too, because we're not doing them. We're coasting on a chance at the grant.
I don't think
So-
anybody here at this table knows how to go ahead and work with a grant and tell the board on how to spend it and what they gotta set aside, other than someone that couldn't sit here at this table and say, we're applying for some money, and we'd like it, we think we
That's
got a
why
good
this-
chance to
that's why
get
there
it.
has to be a
Have no
decisive
idea how to
plan.
budget for it,
Well,
though.
then whoever presents it has got to have we
Well,
all
okay,
have
but-
a decisive plan.
Cool, because we can't
But you
decide
mean
that.
not only this kind of decisive plan that has these concrete figures, but we have to understand the decisive plan of where the 65 comes from.
So who can do that?
You have two choices when you come to the table. You have two choices where you can say, commissioners, in the past over 3 years, that there's an amount of money that we have underspent in hopes that we would have grant allocation come across us that we feel is necessary for this board to allocate funds to. Your other options, madams and sirs, is that over the next 2 years, we take $35,000 from the allocations that you give us annually, and that is something less that we would enhance other parks with, or make other large capital improvements to. It's your choice if you'd like to invest in this one now or over 2 years and utilizing our budgets that you allot us at budget time.
And historically, to that argument, we do have a capital improvement budget, and sometimes we've spent it, but a lot of times we end up with a capital improvement budget where there's just not enough money to do what we need to do, so we don't spend it. Because I'm just seeing
That's
that
happened
year
since
after
I've
year.
been here.
Yeah, it just keeps happening, because we want to fix the grub shack. Well, that's gonna be $70,000, well, we've got 15. Okay, I guess we can't do that, and it just keeps happening. So, and we can present that to the board. I mean, because the board, that's the problem. The board knows it's all the board's money. So, and that's, I think, the trap we're in, is we talk about our budget. It's like, oh, we set your budget every year. Like, it's not really.
But next March, we gotta go in front of the board. How are we gonna ask them for the money? Do we bring an expert here that says, you're just gonna have to take it out of your general fund the next 2 or 3 years, and we don't know?
What I would recommend to whoever's going to present this is to have no less than 2 motions that we're going to read the Thursday before we sit up here on Tuesday. And one of those motions is going to be exactly what Jen just said, for us to recognize that we set aside, will you please fund the $65,000? Recognizing the fact that we have underspent our budget by that in the last 3 years. The second motion would be to take it out in 2 years. I recognize the fact that we're going to take it out of our capital improvement budget.
I don't know if I like that idea. We got stuff that we gotta fix.
A lot of
And
Which is, I
there's a
said, no
lot of
less
stuff that's gotta
than
be
three. Your
fixed.
third motion could be that we will lower our budget down by 20,000 for 3 years. But still have 25,000 in our capital outlay to continue to do projects.
One of the things you will have to tell them is that this grant is not an allocation that's sent to you that is spent and reimbursed. That question will come up, that you have to, that the county is, that the allocation of this budget is a full budget with reimbursements being sent back through the grant. That will be a topic that you will want
So,
to make sure.
I think that's understood, because the acquisition grant was the same way, but maybe the muscle memory isn't there anymore. It's been 10 years since that was purchased.
Veronica Valley is longer than 10.
10?
I'm the only one that was
2005, right? Yeah, so you're talking 15
Will
years.
might
I
have
was
been
gonna say,
on
I
board.
just
So it's
started-
15 years that no
Yes,
improvements haven't been
15
made.
years.
Oh, okay, I
That's
thought it
it.
was only 10.
No, nobody's
Right,
gonna remember
because
that.
the board will
Wow.
tell you, the board members that were on there, which Melinda's probably the only one, is this park wasn't supposed to cost us any money.
Oh, boy.
And that's the dilemma that this commission has here.
Hey, we made it 15 years.
Supposed to, yeah, it's a rough.
So could we make a motion, Melissa, that would say, board members, we'd like you to approve that if this grant gets approved in December for this amount, that this board has to commit to $65,000? Yes or no?
Aren't you just asking for permission to apply?
No, we got that last night.
We got-
We're asking, yeah.
Michelle doesn't remember a motion that you had to apply. You
No,
only have
the
the
motion was
motion,
for the
was
public
the public hearing.
Yeah.
You don't have a
No.
motion to apply for this grant yet.
We had one, and all we did last night was change the name of it.
No, it didn't go through. Did you stay? No, it didn't
So
go
it
through.
didn't go through.
No, it didn't go through. You
What?
only got the public hearing because they said to you, you had to have a public hearing
Yeah,
before you
yeah.
could apply.
Yeah, that I understand.
But we had that public hearing.
And then somebody, was it Deb, said that we can always call a special session? Is that what
No, I think it was that there was gonna be a public hearing at 8:30 and that you're on the board, you're on the agenda to come to them to ask to apply.
That's correct. At the next meeting?
In March.
In that, right,
March
because it
10th.
would start at 9.
But
right after the public hearing.
Laura's partially right. We didn't know about the deadline. That's why we said we could always have a special meeting the day of our executive, because we
Oh.
would be here, and if we had to, we could, but that's not going to be I can't make
Right,
that a
you would be
problem.
able to put that on the
Yeah.
agenda.
So how should the
Yeah.
motion that I make be worded?
I believe, aren't you asking, you're asking the board after your public hearing to apply for this grant?
Yes, to apply for the grant.
To apply for the grant, and that the maximum exposure to the county, if this grant is approved, is 65,000, but that it's reimbursed, the county fronts the money to be reimbursed.
Total projects, 215 and. that
So
one.
the motion is to allow us to apply for the grant and approve a $65,000 matching grant. And don't you think that then our questions will answer the rest of it, right? We don't probably have to have that in motion.
I would think so.
We would just say match it and we'll go from there.
Right.
And then,
Because you apply and
We
then you
can accept
accept.
the
It's
answers.
when you accept, you come back to the board after you get it, that it has to be accepted by the board. And then your budget amendments all go into.
Let's get these words out. We gotta get going.
Yeah,
We
this
gotta
is-
vote on it today.
So
Okay.
what is,
Not to sidelines, but clarify the numbers that are handwritten on the side here. Is our total on this first proposal 217?
Oh, that's what I'm saying, is that
What is that
if
total?
we took out, wasn't able to rerun this
Thank you.
this spreadsheet, so if we were able to take out the 10K, there's gonna be a slight uptick if we increase the roof on the UA potty component there. Add the roof, that's what the 5K circle is. So I had a -10 and then I had a plus 14 there, so $4,000 different in the total cost. It's not gonna amount to much here, but it'll be a little uptick.
So it's actually going to be
are you saying it's 221 then?
2190, which means then we got that's 6.
Question.
70, is that, so we got a 7190 to do this as proposed? For the
Well,
county?
no, because we're at 30% instead of 25, so I wouldn't go more than 65.
Well,
Right?
they won't give us any more than 150 though. So if we get to 221, we gotta, Yeah, there's no benefit to.
What's wrong with these numbers up here?
Yeah, what,
The total project, I think, is 221,900.
why, where are you getting?
These numbers on the side of the column, Dave,
Those
since
are
we talked this
subtractions.
morning, I wasn't able to read
No,
on
two
the
of them are
spreadsheet. So the
Right.
9,000 is adding back in the bridge approaches that I took out in
Got
that
it.
scenario last week.
Okay.
This is from last week. So the 9K, and then I added 5K into the number 6 because of the roof question over the potties. But I said to counteract that, well, let's just take out the gravel prepping on the side, on the side, number 1 in the parking lot there, and doing improvements to the parking lot.
No, but per.
So the net of that is 4,000, I believe.
Okay, but per Kyle's point, that bottom line should be 215, period. Correct?
I have no idea.
If you increase the total cost down at 214,9, I can't run this without me.
So that,
It's
it is
basically
listed
gonna
with
be-
these numbers, with the 10K subtracted, 9K added, 5K added. The total participant expenditures then would go up to 218,900. Then we've got down here, they added in 3,000 for a UA typographical survey. Is that something we got?
Well, we put that, that's not in the grant, we put that would be, for example, a good place for your park budget, your park allocation, to hire a survey done for the park.
So we don't
I
have
didn't
to-
put that in the grant, but
So
it's a
then
cost
don't
out.
complicate this. This all
Okay.
has to
Yeah,
be.
don't-
Okay, so 218,900 is our number. What about this $3,000 local non-matching funds? What
That
it?
is the topographic
That's the topo survey.
That's the type of, okay. So our total grant application would be 218,90, or 900, excuse me, and then we 150 that. We get 900 each.
He's gotta
So we're-
make up a new one.
So we're at,
Yeah, I'll
Well,
rerun
definitely.
this.
so but still, to hit this list, we're asking the board to give us basically $69,000.
And I don't know why, because we could do this.
Yeah.
Some of these things could be done the following year. And I think there might be some advantage of saying, let's make it a $200,000 project, and all we want from the board is $50,000. And we'll take the following year, and we'll put the roof on the outhouse. And the following year, we'll put.
On your own dime, you're saying?
Yeah. Because my read on last night's group is it's going to be a tough sell, and if we could ask for 50 and not 68, and we say we've got 40, we're really only asking for $10,000, which is the amount we said we
So-
gave back last year.
What can we axe out of here?
I think.
We'll let him do it.
No, I think no, because we gotta sell it. Well, we gotta sell.
But
That's
he'll
what's
he'll
pushed.
draft it up.
Well, that's
Yeah, I'll
what's
correct these, I'll run them for you once you tell me what you want.
Safety, accessibility and safety. So I think Kyle's right, porta potty, if we can just do that, pop a porta potty out or something like that. Part of the upper loop, if we can, a little more on that. Maybe even a wildlife observation station, something we can easily pick away at. But the safety of the swimming ponds is key.
The porta potty may be an
Okay.
exception, only because that comes
Fine.
very directly from.
Something else other
the-
than,
I understand your point.
okay.
So what about, we like, honestly, from 10 to 15, these are all small ball things that we can buy in our budget. That means they're $1,000, $2,000 things.
But still, he's got points here that we gotta have.
That's why shelter or screening around the porta potty matters, because it'll be part of building the point package.
Okay, but what about, what are we getting for the recycled benches, the picnic tables, the trail panels? How about these, you probably need these ADA parking spaces to get points,
Yes.
I'm guessing?
Yeah.
So those,
But these other things, no, we could take those out, I think.
so we need to keep the ADA, we
Well-
definitely need the fishing
If
observation deck, we
you wanna
definitely need
get
the
down to
structure.
50K, right, is what you're saying?
We need the
Yes.
porta potty, we need the UA bridges, we need the pass. I mean, what about the interpretive, well, there's no, okay, there's no money there for that, so. we got a lot of money for this classroom. How important is that?
It sounds like a lot of money. It's a pavilion though. I mean, it's a roof and it's structural, it's got a floor. I mean, I don't know, you can't do what we had envisioned any cheaper. That's pretty.
No, I'm not like attacking the cost.
Oh, no, I know, but I'm
is-
just saying, if you put 14 there, we won't be able to build it that size.
No, I'm just
So-
saying, is that something that's important? Because I guess, I agree, the important thing is the path and the fishing platform. That's what, in my mind, we gotta get. It's the whole point of this.
Well, and to have a good chance of getting it, we've got to do the UA parking.
Yes,
And
so-
the UA pathways, and I'm suggesting also the porta potty.
Yes.
But-
Okay.
So,
So what- that's
so
what I'm-
eliminating number 7, the shade structure, open air classroom?
Well, tell me, is that something that's a no-go? Is that really important for the scoring? Is that, I mean, what is that? Yes, no, maybe so?
You know, it's hard to answer that. It's got value to the project. It's a UA component. This place is about kids. So what I would
Okay.
suggest maybe we could do is, if you wanted to go from 65 to 50, I find 15 in here. Maybe the roof structure, it can't be the same type of structure. Maybe it's gotta be smaller. You know, I can't tell you without its design stuff. So every time we take a swag at it, then we're kind of tying our hands into a budget and not having an idea what we're actually building. So, but I get what you're saying. The shade structure is one, to try and find some. I'm gonna already try to look at the pathway, double check that, but assuming that's correct, we'll have to leave that. Take out the parking lot and parking lot improvements completely, right, number
We
one.
might not get down to 50. If we could get below 65, okay.
Where,
Can't,
even if
okay,
we,
but-
yeah,
In-
even if we just take out the wildlife observation platforms, the recycled benches, the picnic tables, and the interpretive panels, we can get down to 63.1.
Mhm.
Okay.
And if we can find a couple bucks, I mean, I think we're.
We're moving in the right direction right now. I want to bring this up. Should we, right now, pick a special meeting date to do this again?
God.
It'll be finalized. I mean, then this will be done. But we still have to go through a couple other things on the agenda here. We are seeming to come to consensus that we need to get the match down to 55,000, as low as we can.
And still have it be like this.
If I have some level of liberty to get the 50, down to 50, $15,000 out of this budget, I don't want to do it without looking at the scoring and what we might impact on scoring completely, but I got your guidance here, and I'll send you 2 or 3 scenarios this week, and perhaps they can be looked at, and Dave's suggesting another peek at them together, but.
Well, I'm thinking that's going to be necessary.
Right.
I have next week. Kyle, would you be available to do some of this sell of our request to the Board of Commissioners on the 10th?
Let's see.
That's a morning,
Oh, goodness.
And so what did you say?
it's a morning meeting.
Oh,
Well-
I mean, if you come, Dave, and it's,
No, that's the point, is I won't be in
Oh, you
town
won't be here.
on that day. Steve's already indicated he will be
okay,
one of the point people on it.
okay.
But I'm wondering if we need a special meeting, special session again next week.
What time would the meeting be on?
It would be good.
Begins at 9.
Currently, I think double booked for the morning. I got a check. I'm supposed to be upstairs with Josh Mikowski for the Leelanau students, and I got a hearing in Grand Traverse.
9th or
Okay,
10th?
well, the
How
10th.
do you do that?
That's the
Well,
argument.
that's what I gotta figure out.
Well, we can find it.
But we'll, okay.
But if I'm upstairs with the students, maybe
Let's see, Casey
if I'm
might be
here.
back. If Casey's back, that would be a great
Steve,
second.
Steve will be
Steve
here
and Casey?
for sure, and
Okay.
okay. But I still want to know if we want to finalize the discussion we've been having with a special session next week. I think we need to.
When can you have it done?
I'll try to get these out this week, so it's ahead of next week. Friday, I'll say Friday.
Are you getting it out so that we can say yes to it, or are you just gonna?
I'm going to rework this worksheet and
Do it.
and have you take a look at them, you know, and as what.
With this new guidance that we've given him through all of this discussion.
Could be what, 60,000 or 50?
Is, I guess, as
I'll-
close as you can get to 50 and still have the essential stuff
Right.
there and not have us losing points.
Did
Okay.
we prioritize what we want to take?
No, we can't, we'd be here till midnight.
We have-
He knows the point system and all that.
There's just not that much in here. I mean, there's
No, there
only,
isn't.
we're down to like 5 or 6 main items here, so it's gonna either
I'm-
be scaling them back or eliminating them.
Could we,
So that-
any chance we could do it Monday?
I'm free Monday,
I'm free Monday.
Tuesday, Ash Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday is better for me. Tuesday is best for me.
Pardon me, I'm doing that Wednesday.
You wanna do it Tuesday at 3?
Tuesday,
work for you?
I could do Tuesday at 3.
But that's okay. It's more important to-
So that's February 25th?
Correct.
Will
Well,
that work?
I got a dentist at 1:30.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get it out to you all.
I mean, we
and-
can do 3:30, that would increase my likelihood of being here too. 'Cause I get an
That's
afternoon
fine.
thing in Grand Traverse.
That's fine. 3:30?
I'm up against the wall on Wednesdays. I could do 3:30,
And Tuesday's 25th,
correct?
3:30?
That's COPA.
That's
I'm
good for
phys-
me.
I'm
You
physically
don't have to do that.
in Lansing in the morning and theoretically back, but I don't necessarily need to be at the meeting. I can
That's
call
correct,
in.
not for this one, not after what we.
Right.
I'm writing it down at 3:30.
Do we need to vote on that, or is that just something we establish? I mean,
Why don't I send out a quorum request to everyone, make sure we have a quorum for that date, and make sure there is a room available? Okay,
3:30, 25th is what we're aiming for.
yes.
We shouldn't need a very big room.
If not, I could do Thursday at 3:30. I can do 3:30 every day.
Yeah, actually, I could too through that stretch.
I could, Wednesday's not totally out. I could do Wednesday also.
Wednesday, I'm pushing up against 5
Your
o'clock.
Time, is that bad for you Wednesday?
I'm going all next week except Monday.
Oh, okay.
You're going all next week except Monday?
Except Monday, but that's okay.
One question before we leave the grant. If we get lucky enough to get the $150,000, when does that money go into the general fund? Doesn't it all go in as one check, all of a sudden?
No.
No,
Just parceled out?
As you spend the money,
As you spend it, okay. so
we
I
have to
thought
front
that
it
that
and
would
then they
spend
reimburse.
he lets a contract out.
Over 2 years even.
Yeah,
Okay, is Monday, because of Ty, is Monday at 3:30?
it's fine with me. I could do 3 o'clock on Monday.
It's not gonna work.
Okay,
We have a special department head meeting.
you already know that, fine,
Council.
fine.
How about 6 in the morning?
So we're waiting to hear, to get your,
Tuesday, February 25th.
Thursday's about as early as I wake up, I don't think I can make it here by 6.
I'll do 7.
you make Tuesday?
I don't know. I didn't bring my calendar. I didn't anticipate
Yeah.
we're doing it. So we're right now, we're just talking Tuesday, the 25th at 3:30?
Yeah.
No.
I can try to make that.
Yes, I
Okay, I can, you can, John can, Steve will, so we can get,
Casey,
we can
maybe,
get,
yeah.
we can get a forum,
And maybe Casey?
and maybe Casey. So, let's head towards that, special session next Tuesday.
And that special session, we're gonna look at what he's gonna give us, and we're gonna make a motion to present to the board
Correct.
to fund or apply for a grant. You see, we've never applied for this grant. Then what did we do last night? Just change the name of it?
Set the public
All we
hearing.
did was set the public hearing,
Oh,
And
but
it's technically not a public hearing, right? It's
that's
just a
correct.
Public
Public
meeting.
input session
Public
is what it's
input
called.
session.
Yes.
It's not a hearing.
Right, we set the date for that.
oh, you did?
Because we, we did, that's that morning of March 10th, starting at 8:30, prior to the executive board session where the request for them to approve this application, this being the corrected one we would get, at that executive session. But the public input, starts a half hour prior to that.
All right.
And that's where Steve is gonna have to be the point man, and I hope Casey is gonna be back at that point. So with that done, can we leave the grant and move on to
You're welcome.
any report from Miles Kimmerly?
No. So, Ty, can you report that?
It's still there.
Melinda,
Snowy.
we need, you were gonna get in contact with the church people who want the concert? You've been in?
No, that
or
was
you
me.
can-
I don't know that church.
There's a special
Who's
event
committee?
request.
I've seen the emails, but I haven't.
Well, okay.
With Casey, I thought he was.
I thought so too.
Didn't we have some each year we've had some issues with them, like not being horrible, but not doing.
But we
things
got it
quite
down
right?
to where it's okay, and all we gotta do is, we went over all those issues.
Okay.
But I can't remember what they were, but now they got this request. We gotta
It
approve
was
it.
insurance, and they're just tearing the place up, and it was just all a bunch of minor stuff, but.
The March meeting?
Yes.
Casey.
I would suggest deferring that item to March since the Old Settlers Park committee did not meet the formal recommendations to this body.
Okay.
That's the point.
These
that I
people are
missed.
working, are waiting.
So, is that a motion, or is that something?
No, you don't need to make a
Okay,
motion.
so that item we're pushing on to the March meeting.
The church is busing into, release some of the funds and put up the
I
brand.
don't remember what they did. Who would know?
Yeah, because the guy's gonna be gone for
I think
several
you're right.
months or something out of the country, he wanted to go, but it's probably already gone.
Yeah, it's coming. The event's in July or August. But Ty did mention that it would be good to not drag this out like
Right.
it's.
But the Old Settlers
Well, I
Committee.
know, but the guy that was starting to put this on was gonna be out of town, or out of the country, and I think he's probably already gone by now.
I would think he
March
would be
won't be a
accessible
problem.
by email.
But that's up to Casey, right? Okay. Veronica Valley report. Last Friday at the special session, at the full,
At a committee meeting.
at a full committee meeting, Veronica Valley committee meeting, we voted to recommend to this group at the most recent committee meeting to engage Northern Michigan Aquatics for our weed management at Veronica Valley. However, that would happen because of my mistake, that this body in January had already voted to go with Savin Lake Services. And that's because we hadn't gotten Northern Michigan Aquatics response until it was even the next day or something. And then in my discussions with them, I've more or less recommended, okay, I think maybe Northern Michigan Aquatics is better. However, in discussion with the administrator, since we have in our minutes that this body in January voted to go with the only response we had at that moment, Savin Lake Services, that we stick with them. Which doesn't require any more action here, it's his explanation. Fortunately, because you are the one who said, don't contact either one of them until after today's meeting.
Correct.
I have not contacted them, so we don't have any trouble there.
Right.
But we voted in January to go with Savin Lake Services. So I'm going to be contacting them, getting that paperwork together for the March Board of Commissioners approval of a contract.
Wow, I can't remember this meeting unless I was gone, that we approved that, but it's in our minutes that we approved.
I
That was-
printed out the page in the minutes that shows that.
All right, I believe you.
No, it's somewhere in there.
Right here is the copy of the minutes where we went with Savin in January. That's not the Veronica Valley meeting.
Pope voted aye. So you must have been here.
Because they were the only one, and I remember the discussion at the time, Steve Christensen saying, if they're the only one, let's get going, let's get going with them. Well, then this other company responded. I had phone calls with both. I was impressed by the other. They offered a water testing free, that's why I recommended to our committee that we go with them. But it's a moot point now.
For Savin Lake.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's what we're gonna go.
So it's mute, we haven't contacted anybody, which is good,
But I will be
but you will now because
now,
it was
because
on
that's
here.
who we're gonna go with and present to the board in the March meeting.
Oh, that was quick.
That's the better choice.
And at least both of them were recommended by Heather Hedinger as well. I mean, she was satisfied with both of them, so, and I was satisfied with both of them. But that's the direction we're going, because that's what we voted on in January.
I think I would have remembered that. That's brilliant.
Now, item number 5 on the agenda, because unless there's any other question about that specific point in invasive species management in the ponds. Item number 5. Laurel has put this on our agenda and will continue to put it on our agenda in much the same way we've talked about and tried punch list, or whatever your term was for it. So that on our agenda each week or each month, there is this item that encourages us to each be reviewing as we go through the year, the 5-year recreation plan through the coming years, so that we don't lose track of what we said we were going to do in the 5-year plan. But this agenda item will be a place where that information can be brought up, where we can bring to the group for discussion, hey, we said we were going to do this and so at Miles Kimberly in our 5-year plan, and we haven't talked about it for 10 months or something.
Do you know what he's talking about? In our 5-year plan, there was action items behind each one. We should be ready at our meetings. When we go to Miles Kimberly, let's look at your action items. It's on page 3. That's really what we should be looking at.
That's correct. And
The action items of what it takes to get this.
And I see your point, that should be done with each committee report.
It
each
could
part
be
report.
folded in there instead of having it as an item, what should we do? I would say each committee should, by the way, Scott says he needs some signs over here. Are they being built or not?
Correct.
Signs was one of our items. Are they being ordered? Are they being put in? Anyway, that's my suggestion.
Is the final plan online? Is that what's online?
We voted to approve it. I don't know, we could ask.
It was uploaded to the state, but I was kind of thinking we might be getting hard copies.
You're kind of thinking what?
We'd be getting hard copies.
So
That would be nice.
who has to get the hard copies? The chair?
Oh, has them. Yes.
Oh, okay. He's lost in numbers.
Got it. 200,000.
When are we gonna get our hard copies of our plan?
5-year recreation plan. We've shifted gears.
Whenever you need them. I thought, didn't we send some to you already?
You sent a digital copy for me to
Okay.
upload to the state. I
Okay.
thought typically we get hard copies after it's approved from whoever we contract with.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess I never,
Was that in your budget, to give us hard copies?
well, we've made lots of copies, so that's beyond our, we'll give you copies of the plan. I mean, so, but,
Not many.
I think do we want to wait for the approval? I mean, I assume so.
Yeah, probably.
From the state.
Because it's
Oh.
been uploaded to the state for review.
Oh,
So
okay.
we received final approval.
Yeah, it's kind of in a holding pattern, that's why I
Yeah.
didn't print anything until
We
we
can
got
put that
any
in minutes.
feedback.
We're waiting for state's final review.
You know, she probably won't have anything we need to change, but
Never know.
you never know. So, wait till that comes back and I'll be happy.
We'll keep it
to-
under next year's, or next meeting's.
We will
Old
continue
business.
then on each agenda, as at least the next couple, with this item, recreation plan review. We may then figure out how to fold it into the committee reports. Anything else from any of you on specific agenda? I'll move on to public comment. There is none. So commissioner comments.
If I can't be at the March 18th meeting.
John, could you send me a reminder of that? A copy of the Laurel?
It's going to be in the note, it'll be in the minutes.
Okay.
It's in the
That's
minutes.
minutes.
You got it. Thanks for that.
I have no additional comment.
I
Thank
don't
you
either.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn, so moved.
Was last night's meeting the worst one you've
Second.
ever been to?
We're all aye.
But it was bad.
Yeah.
One of the worst ones I've ever.
Well, it was 15 minutes off.
We finally went home, I think at midnight, the next night in the morning.
I sent a suggestion.